Hey everyone, welcome to the Vanderbloemen Leadership Podcast, where we help you build, run, and keep great teams. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in. Well, hey, welcome in. My name is Jared, and let me tell you, I am so excited about today's talk for two reasons. One, because we have an amazing topic. We're going to talk about burnout and some of the habits that we can develop to prevent it, but also because of our guest today. We have none other than Vanderbloemen's own Senior Client Relations Manager, Will Klotz. Will, welcome on the podcast. It's great to have you, sir.
Thanks so much, Jared. Great to be here. Excited about this topic. I'm familiar with it personally, and then I am constantly dealing with churches and ministries that are talking to us really for a couple of reasons. One reason that churches or ministries might be talking to us is because they've had a ministry leader that has run a really good race and is now ready to hand the reins over as they cross the finish line of their ministry call to someone else.
Yeah.
But then I'm dealing with a lot of others who have just hit a wall, experiencing burnout, and there's some sort of opening in this ministry because somebody had to go step on the sidelines for a little while. And so my goal in this conversation would be, let's increase the former, getting more people to cross that ministry finish line, and less people who are having to leave, because it's just exhausting and has taken a toll on them to a degree that they're burnt out.
Yeah, I love that so much. Maybe let's help our listeners right now. What are some of the warning signs that you could maybe point out in a leader of saying, hey, burnout is maybe not happening right now in your current situation, but this is maybe a red flag of saying, watch out when this pops up, because, that we don't want to, that we just want to make sure that doesn't happen to you in the future.
Yeah. Well, I want to differentiate between just being tired and weary and then experiencing signs of burnout, because no matter what, there's no advice we can offer that will lift the demands and burdens of ministry that make it tiring and exhausting.
Yep.
So there's a kind of tiredness that is almost like, crossing a finish line of a long race where you're worn out and exhausted, but there's a joy in that.
Yes.
And then there's another that is going to have a lot of damaging effects. So what are some of those more concerning signs of weariness or exhaustion? It's going to vary from person to person, and I think those closest to you will have good signs. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes it can affect almost a flip in your personality. So if you are someone that's very outgoing, loves being around people, but all of a sudden you're just kind of closed off, people are exhausting to you, the love and affection that drew you into ministry for people is now waning, and you really don't like people at all. That could be one. So it's this flip of like, hey, I'm normally like this, but man, I seem to be like on the other side of the spectrum. That could be pertaining to things that you once loved, like at Vanderbloemen, we use the working genius kind of profile, and I kind of live in the realm of ideation. I think they call it, like vision, ideas. Hey, we should do this. And I remember seasons of burnout where I'm just like, I've got nothing. Like that personality gifting that I'm usually operating in seems to almost have completely vanished, and I'm not really myself anymore. I would want to, look real closely at just some of those family relationships. A dear pastor friend of mine, as he was entering into a season of ministry burnout, a real flag for him was, his kid said something along the lines of like, oh, it's grumpy dad today. Like that, like his interaction with his kids was increasingly changing because the weight that he was feeling in ministry was now manifesting itself in his family relationships. Mm-hmm. So these are some different areas to look at. I mean, the bottom line is have people around you that can observe, hey, you're maybe beyond just weary. This seems to be affecting you maybe in even more of an adverse way.
Yeah. Let's maybe talk there a little bit more about the importance of the relationships around you, and maybe if you can speak to the value of having those close to you that you trust, and having the voices in your life, the mentors, maybe the close friends that you've given permission to speak that to you when they see it.
Let me give 3 categories of relationship, and this is not rocket science, but this is more meant to be an assessment for anyone listening to ask, do I have these types of relationships in my life, or do I really need this particular type of, like, I need to lean into this type of relationship. And so let me just give you the 3 categories that I think every ministry leader should have. The first would be a coach, the second, a counselor, and then the final is friend. So those 3 categories are really important. Let me start with coach. Of course, it's just wise to have someone, given the significance of what we're carrying in ministry leadership. I wish I had more coaches early on as I was entering into pastoral ministry. We need people who have gone before us that can just look at how we are carrying out our ministry, give advice and counsel and things like that. But let me talk about a coach in a more specific way. You know, my son is running track right now for the first year for his school. And what the coaches are doing, all of these, middle school boys show up with all of these different giftings as it pertains to running or track and field. Like, oh, you are a shot putter, or, oh, you are a long distance runner. And so what this coach is doing is, I can kind of see how you're wired, and I think this race is best for you. I bring that up because sometimes ministry burnout is not necessarily an issue of hard work, but wrong work. Meaning that you are perhaps operating. Now, we all have to do monotonous things that we don't want to do. But if the lion's share of your work is stuff that just is not life-giving to you, like you're not wired that way, you're not gifted in that. Like if you take my personality and put it in a highly detailed, oriented, precise position, I'm going to last 15 minutes and I'm going to be exhausted, right? So part of the role of a coach is to look at you and perhaps the things that you are putting your hands towards, and they can speak to, oh, yeah, you're right where I think God's gifted you, or I think you're out of that a little bit. Let's help you align. So that would be a coach. The second is a counselor. You know, we at Vanderbloemen are serving so many different forms of ministry. Some of the times it's just a pastor that's walking through life with people. And I always say about pastors, you are there for the very best moments and the very worst moments in people's lives. You know, when you show up at the emergency room and have to sit across the table from a mom who has just found out that, you know, they've lost their child, and you're that first source of kind of spiritual comfort for them, you know, that might be something you need to talk with someone and process out. Or if you're dealing with a lot of interpersonal stuff and some divisions within the church, you probably need a counselor to just unravel that mess that's in your mind and unpack that. You know, there are other groups that we're working with, you know, a lot of homeless ministries where you are dealing with people that have all manner of issues of addiction and life-controlling problems. That is a heavy burden that you carry. You're leading a crisis pregnancy center. Whatever the case is, often the people that we're working with, you are dealing with very heavy things. And you need a counselor to help you process that.
I love that.
And then the final piece, this is so essential and it's just neglected. I see it especially with pastors. It'd be an interesting survey. You know, I'm sure there's stats. Pastor, how many of you have someone that you consider a friend, even inside or outside the church? I think it's helpful to have someone outside the church that's your friend, but just you get, you know, so many of our relationships in pastoral ministry are like to get a ministry project done, to counsel someone through a hard time. Like all of our relationships are wrapped up in our job. Is there someone in your life that you're able to just get together with for the pure enjoyment of the relationship? Some of the people listening might need to really emphasize in one of these categories of relationship. Maybe all 3 need to show up. But that would just be an assessment tool. Do I have a coach, a counselor, and a friend? And if not, that's a bit of a red flag.
Yeah, I love that. I think even on the last point too, you talk about a friend. A lot of times there may be a kind of a stigma that, like, you know, ministry is lonely, and at times it can be, but it doesn't have to be. You know, and sometimes it takes a little bit of that extra effort to go and make those relationships that are lasting, that you can kind of just be yourself around, maybe even be a little bit unfiltered around as well.
That's absolutely
let your guard down. I think that's so important. What are maybe some of the best practices that you've seen in leaders that have been more of a preventative measure for burnout? That you know, we talked about the relational side, but the personal side of what are things that a leader can be doing to maybe make sure that they go and, as you said, they finish this race well.
Yeah, that's great. I think of kind of this broad category that I'd love the leaders listening to think about and ask this question. Do I have any rhythms of rest and recreation in my life? Let me just talk about the first one, because that's more straightforward. And I think there's lots of work recently that's been put out on the significance of Sabbath and just the need for rhythms in our life where we are stepping back. Maybe just this podcast is just a simple check engine light for some ministry leader listening that, hey, it's been a little while. That PTO balance is getting a little high. We need to schedule something, even if you feel like you don't need it, to just get some time away to just be and not do. So let's use some of those vacation benefits that are given to us, because a lot of ministry leaders just let those accumulate and don't ever take time off. Let's make sure that there is a day where you are stepping away from the work of ministry and are just resting and recouping. This distinction between doing and being, right? Be a human being one day of the week. So, having those rhythms of rest are so important. What I want to emphasize is also just some measure of recreation in your life. All the time I'm talking to pastors that are just nose to the grindstone, and I ask the question, hey, what do you do for a little bit of recreation and fun? And I'm not even talking about taking a day off, just something that is not ministry. And the answer perpetually is nothing at all. Another question would be, hey, just your physical health, like walks, lifting a little bit of weights, going on, give me something about, and I just don't have time for that right now. I'm in a season, we're leading up to Easter and we've got to grind this out, right? So I want to talk about that recreation and kind of maybe fitness piece a little bit more. I find it often helpful and life-giving. There's just maybe a little tidbit for pastors. Someone once said that if you work with your hands, you should rest with your mind. Yes. And if you rest with your mind, if you work with your mind, rest with your hands. Yes. Meaning, a lot of pastors, we are studying, we're with people, we are thinking through theological or strategic issues for our church. I remember when I was pastoring, just the joy of doing some little house project, and I'm not even handy and good at it, but like, when COVID hit, I just assembled some wood pieces around in my house and built a little bird feeder, and we put it outside, and it didn't last more than like a week or two before it destroyed. But there was something, and I think a lot of pastors will resonate with this, where it just never feels like in pastoral ministry there's any sort of completion, any sort of, we completed a project. Like, it's always an ongoing thing. And just to take an hour to work on a bird feeder or whatever you're interested in, and just like, wow, I actually accomplished, like, there's a physical thing that is it is finished from this. So I think it's good for pastors who do a lot of work with their mind and a lot of work in relationships, have some kind of recreation in your life, whether it's some hobby, something that is a little bit more physical, a little bit more tangible. I think that can be really life-giving for you. Now, if none of that interests you, I still hope that you will focus on having some sort of recreation, something that's purely enjoyable. It isn't feeding into ministry. It's not strategic. It's not somehow helping accomplish the mission. Something that's purely done for the enjoyment of it, that is regularly happening in your life. I think that's really important.
That's amazing. We've talked a lot about the burnout and the preventative measures for the senior leader. What are maybe some tips or best practices, some ways that you've seen it done well of helping leaders of teams help those who are a part of the team, maybe either, kind of more of that preventative measure, or even helping them work through some burnout that they may be experiencing? Do they need to take some time off from the team? Do they need to maybe find a different team? Or like, what are just some ways that as a leader, you can help those who are part of your organization who may be experiencing those pains?
Yeah, there's obviously, when we have a team, we're getting together to accomplish a task, and we want to constantly be doing assessment and feedback to make sure each team member is contributing to the work. That's like apparent that's the role of the leader. But I wonder how many of the leaders listening are also watching their team with another set of eyes. That's not just, are we getting the task done, but how is my team doing? Am I asking intentional questions that are drawing out the spiritual vitality of my team members? So sometimes, if you've got, for example, a church leadership team, it's so easy to be so outward focused with your people or the people that you're trying to reach that you neglect even the people that are carrying out that work of ministry.
Yeah.
And so I think our team leaders need to have such a special eye. And as you get to know people a little more, kind of like that relational piece earlier, you'll begin to see, oh, you seem to be operating outside of kind of your normal approach, your normal personality, your normal passion seems to be waning a little bit. I want to lean into that some. I want to insist on people taking rhythms of Sabbath and even sabbatical as whatever that policy looks like in your church, even if they say, oh, I just don't really feel like I need that right now. I think we need to gently encourage those kinds of things. I just think being an example of spiritual health, being an example of someone that is taking time away from the grind to spend time in the presence of God, that is nurturing their own relationship, that's holding to that quote that Jesus says in John, that he's the vine, we're the branches. Apart from him, we can do nothing. I hope that our leaders are setting the example of that for their team, for the longevity of their health.
Yeah. I love that so much. What's maybe just as a pastor, a lot of times we can think that thought maybe, burnout will never happen to me. I'll never experience, that'll never happen to me, kind of it'll happen to other people. But, I'm one who just puts the nose to the grindstone, as you said. Can you maybe hit more on the differentiation of being able to just work hard and versus I'm actually burnt out? Because you hit on it in a little bit, but the balance of how do we understand of, hey, this is something that it is okay to work hard in ministry. It is okay to really, and maybe even have seasons of where it is a little bit of that nose to the grindstone, but also the balance of you do need to rest and you do need to recognize that.
Yeah. So the distinction between really hard, difficult work that is a part of our call no matter what, there's no way out of it, versus this is now adversely affecting me. I might compare it to running a little bit. So because I often think of ministry as a marathon. If you hate running, don't tune this podcast out. That's fine. But if you're in ministry, you're in a marathon of its own sort. And, when you're doing long distance running, there are aches and pains you begin to identify that are just like, oh, I'm just a little sore. That's just normal. This hurts. It's part of it. And then there's a pain that is, if I don't stop and take a break, this is going to sideline me for the next 2 months. And so smart marathon runners can identify the difference between the two, and they will say, okay, this is just some weariness. My foot just hurts, but I can make it the next couple miles. Or that's like a flashing, sharp pain. I can push through this thing if I want, but then I'm going to be sidelined for a while. I would say similarly with ministry, there is just, I am physically tired. I need to get some sleep, or my body is tired from a long Sunday at church, or there's just weariness. And then, gosh, I haven't had like a deep conversation with my wife, it feels like, in a few weeks. Like we've just been grinding it out. That if I don't do something, I'm going to be sidelined for a while if I don't nurture my relationship with my wife. Or I am deeply, we all have ebbs and flows of kind of joy and sadness. I've been in a dark cloud for weeks, and I'm fighting to make it to the next Sunday. This isn't just kind of some temporary seasonal depression. I'm in a dark place, and I need to go tap into that counselor resource that we got into. So, and maybe other people can help differentiate between just, hey, this is just hard and you're tired, or hey, this is going to give you an injury that's going to really put at jeopardy the longevity of your ministry.
I love this so much. Well, as we kind of come to a close today, I just want to know, is there maybe any just last reminders to leaders today as we kind of are talking about this discussion of burnout? Any just last reminders, last thoughts to give them today as we kind of close?
Yeah, there's been so much talk about ministry post-COVID. Everybody, in terms of burnout, ministry burnout post-COVID, that was a huge topic of conversation. I mean, we're 5 years out now, and we're kind of still on that. And lots of people left the ministry during that initial season, and we're kind of feeling the ramifications of that. But there's simultaneously an exciting thing that's happening that adds the weight to the need for you to stay in ministry.
Yeah.
Somehow, even as lots of people have left the ministry, ironically, Gen Z, lots of studies have been done now. Like, this is the first generation where Christianity is not declining.
Yep.
And there's actually an increased spiritual interest in Gen Z that goes back multiple generations. We've not seen this.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to ministry leaders and say, not only for your own sake, please take preventative measures to prevent burnout, but man, there's a whole generation of spiritually inclined, interested people that need you.
Yeah.
We need shepherds. We need people in this thing for the long run, because there is an interest out there in Jesus right now in ways that I've not seen, and maybe at any point in my own spiritual journey. Yeah. So that in Matthew, Jesus is looking at his disciples and mindful of the call that's on them to initiate the church and to take his finished work to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. He knows that's where it's headed, but as he looks in the immediate, he says, the harvest is ready, but the laborers are few. Yeah. Right now, the harvest is ready, and we need laborers. It's okay if you're a tired laborer. We just need non-burned out laborers.
Yes.
So not just for your own sake, for the sake of this generation that needs healthy spiritual leaders. Stay in this thing and take care of yourself so you don't get burned out.
I love that so much. Thank you, Will, for being able to come on the podcast today.
Love it. Thank you.
Yes. And here's what I know, leader. If you emphasize relationships, rest, and recreation, you can take the preventative measures to not burn out. Thanks again for joining us on the Vanderbloemen Leadership Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're looking for more leadership resources, you can find us at vanderbloemen.com and on socials at Vanderbloemen. We'll see you again next week, where we continue discussing how to build, run, and keep great teams.